So say that in the unlikely event, a spider falls on you, and the spider starts crawling down your bare knee. Now, what do? So, whether you cry, start screaming, or calmly remain poised and remove the spider from your leg, your nervous system goes through several steps, and there are three principal functions to what's happening. These are sensory input, integration, and then motor output. So the sensory input is when that spider falls on you, there's those 8 little legs which are detected by the sensory receptors. Then this information is transferred to the brain and the body, and this is called integration. Here, they decide, what are you going to do about this? Your body and mind work together to figure out how to respond. And then your hand lashing out, accompanied with the scream, is the motor output. So you can see that this is a very integrated system, and it's needed to detect and respond to these things, like data like this, all the time. And the nervous, so today I'll be talking about behavioral science, and my name is Ankita, and this is my personal project. So the personal project is an assignment, or rather an opportunity, which allows students to use the 9 months of this time to do whatever it is they're interested in. So some people hear this project and go wild. Some people run away. Some people remain calm. Now, these are all different emotions, and these are linked in with behavior. And this is what brings me to my topic, behavioral neuroscience. Now, this is a very long, scary word, seems very complicated, but what really matters is it's the one topic which I found interested and satisfied everything that I wanted to learn about and further explore. It satisfied both the subjects of biology and psychology, which are both things I love to read about and, explore. So, behavioral neuroscience is a huge topic, and it's defined as the biology of neurology, of the study of psychology in terms of genetics and development mechanisms of human behavior. So this is a huge topic, and I can keep on talking till midnight, but for my own sanity and yours, we'll keep it short. So I've watered it down to a couple of topics, including the nervous system and how this affects your everyday behavior and actions. And since we're talking about sanity, why not throw a little bit of psychology into that? So the nervous system has several levels of organization, which is ironic because I'm always nervous, always disorganized. Anyways, so if you look at this, the nervous system's two main parts are the central and peripheral. So the peripheral has two more systems within it. So the sensory division, also known as the afferent, is what stimulates the sense that, hey, you have a spider on you. And then the motor division is what's the lashing hand or the scream, which is like, hey, hand parts, why don't you do something about that spider? And then within that, there's somatic nervous system, and also known as a voluntary nervous system, which is when your muscles and glands communicate with the brain and move. And then there's the autonomic or involuntary nervous system, which is what keeps your heart beating, your stomach churning, your lungs breathing, and so on. And within this, there's two more complementary sections, including the sympathetic division, which is what gets your whole body fired up and energized and say, ah, spider! And then there's the parasympathetic division, which talks it down and calms it down and says, it wasn't a black widow, just a little spider, you're fine. So here you can see that the human nervous system is one of the most distinctive out of all organisms and all animals. And it's one of the most complex ones, and it's great to learn about. And something I missed out is that the central one consists of your brain and spinal cord, and the peripheral one is all the nerves which branch out from the brain and spinal cord. So moving on, so take my morning routine, for example. I snooze the alarm, to get on my phone, then get the energy to roll off bed. I eat, shower, shower, and then I went to school in hopes that today I won't be late, even though I live 4 minutes away from school. Anyways, the nervous system is very, very important, and it's essential. There is no you without the nervous system. There are no things without the nervous system. There are no animals. There are no organisms. The nervous system is essential. And so, as I've been talking a lot, sciencey, very sciencey, and there's a lot to be digesting and a lot for me to be feeding, let's switch a bit to the psychological side of this. So I talked to a guy named Mr. Mark Goodwin, and he's a psychologist who used to work in the UK as in cognitive and behavioral testing, and now he works in Bangkok as a therapist to private clients who suffer with ADHD and other mental health disorders. So I asked him, what does behavioral neuroscience mean to you? And what does behavior mean to you? So he started by sharing a quote by Mr. William James, who's known as the godfather of psychology. Now, he said, bodily experience, therefore, and more particularly brain experiences, must take a place amongst those conditions of the mental life of which psychology needs to take account. Now, I was thrown off balance the first time I saw this too. Believe me, there's still so much to this I haven't explored. But what I can tell you is that when it comes to behavioral neuroscience, you have to look at the big picture. You have to understand that the body and mind are connected. They work together. There's no mind without the body. There's no body without the mind. It's all one system. So then he told me, behavior is much more simpler than people think. It can be described in two directions, simplistically, which is wanting more or wanting less. Now, you may contradict me on this and say that, no, it's defined as a way which oneself conducts or acts oneself, especially towards others. Well, yeah, by wanting more or wanting less, whether be it yourself or other people. And behavior can also be explained as the improving your survival, or my personal favorite, in an interactive learning model, depending on responses you get, whether you choose to change your behavior or continue the way you've been going. So after that, I did a little more research. And I talked to a graduate from RJ Medical University, and I talked to a neurologist in clinical research. So behavior is influenced by countless factors. It includes willpower, it includes knowledge, its application, social factors, motivation, ability, surrounding environment, attitude, perception, imagination, judgment, and much more. And so you can't really determine one's behavior and determine, well, what controls behavior. And experts say that you, as well as your brain, both have ultimate control over your behavior. So there's a lot of parts to the brain, and I'm not going to bore you by trying to explain them all and trying to pronounce all those names. But if you do look at the cerebrum, the hub of behavior is known as the anterior cingulate cortex, which is located which is responsible for controlling decision-making, emotion, and impulse. And it's located in the cerebrum of the brain, which is the largest part of the brain. And the whole cerebrum is included with decision-making, perception, imagination, motivation, and thought. So the four parts are the frontal, temporal, parietal, and occipital. So if you look at the anterior portion of the frontal lobe, you can, this is where the limbic system is in place. And this is to do with your personality. This is what makes up your personality. This is what makes up your emotional behavior. And then the temporal lobe is to do with your memory. So memory storage, retrieval, and so on. And then the frontal lobe is also in charge of judgment. It's in charge of planning. It's in charge of significant changes that are seen in your behavior. So many of you may be familiar with the term emotional quotient. I mean, intelligence quotient. But I would like to draw your attention to what I was saying, emotional quotient. Now, this means the capability of individuals to recognize their own and others' emotions. So, different feelings. So, to be able to distinguish them and label them properly is to have a high value of EQ. And it helps to acquire emotional info and guide thinking in terms of behavior and also achieve one's goals. So if you follow along with me right now, maybe I can help you get an idea of your emotional quotient. So remember Mr. Mark, the psychologist and therapist? He told me the first thing a therapist does when talking to a client is ask them to explain what they're feeling. Now, if you're able to accurately label and distinguish these feelings you're feeling, then your EQ value is high. Now, this is not common in many people. And don't be fooled. This is actually very hard to do. I've tried. So, moving on, happiness, sadness, anger, nerves, these are all feelings that I'm sure everyone here has experienced. And so, for example, what do you do when you're happy? It depends on who you are, really. But there are a few commonalities that are seen in everyone. For example, smiling. Why do you smile when you're happy? This is because it's simply, if you want to explain it, it's an expression and an action which determines this emotion. But more scientifically, it's located in the center of your brain, in the parietal lobe, and it stimulates that region, which results in smiling or results in the impulse of a jump of joy. Further on, sadness, for example. If you cry or if you feel vulnerable, crying. So crying can occur due to a couple of reasons. And experts say that it's a biological as well as emotional response, and it's often a way people respond to stress. And scientifically, it activates the hypothalamus, which is a small part in the frontal lobe, and this communicates this information throughout the brain and the body, and then it puts tear production into action. This is when you get that lump in your throat. And then, sorry. Anger, on the other hand, takes over emotional control. It takes over your whole emotional centers. You vent, you shout, and you try to regain this whole emotional control. And that's why we're always told to calm down when we're angry. And this is because we're losing control over our emotions, and it's also because the loss of control of emotions can often result to severe consequences. So because you're trying to control this person, you may increase volume, you may increase aggression, you may want to dominate the person. And this is what behavior is all about. And finally, nerves. This is something I've experienced right before this talk, lunch today, and internally right now. But nerves has a lot of things going on. It has a lot to do with adrenaline. It has a lot to do with a response called fight or flight. And, well, fight or flight is a response to a threat or a nervous situation or an attack or a perceived harmful event. And in this response, you either fight the situation, where you confront it, or you flight the situation, where you escape. And so when your nervous system is when you're nervous, you're full of anxiety, your body activates the system and it pushes adrenaline throughout. And then this results in something like you stuttering or you're shaking. So, and then this response promotes the body and brain to further connect and work together. It's all the same theory, really, and the body is amazing. So, the next time you encounter a spider, or you feel happy, or you distinguish an emotion, or you feel you getting the nerves, then remember this talk. And remember that your body and mind is connected. Your body works as one whole system. It's difficult to identify emotions. And behavior is simply a wanting more or wanting less. And it is very hard to distinguish, and it's from countless factors. And finally, remember that behavior is simply an interactive learning model depending on the responses you get. Either you choose to change or continue the way you're behaving. Thank you.